The India's parliamentary budget session commenced today with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressing confidence in the nation's economic trajectory. Narendra Modi emphasized that the upcoming budget will of course be a key milestone in achieving developed India target by 2047. He also outlined innovation, inclusion and investment as the country's top priorities with a strong focus on empowering youth and women.
जब आजादी के 100 साल होंगे, विकसित भारत का जो संकल्प देश ने लिया है, ये बजट सत्र, ये बजट एक नया विश्वास पैदा करेगा, नई ऊर्जा देगा.
The President Droupadi Murmu also addressed the joint sitting of the Parliament and highlighted the government's commitment to economic progress. She also highlighted the administration's efforts in accelerating policy implementation and driving structural reforms.
विकसित भारत के विजन में जन भागीदारी का सामूहिक सामर्थ्य है, देश की आर्थिक उन्नति का रोडमैप है, डिजिटल क्रांति के रूप में टेक्नोलॉजी की ताकत है और आधुनिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर आधार भी है. मेरी सरकार के प्रयास के बल पर भारत दुनिया की तीसरी सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था बनने जा रही है.
And also Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is all set to present the budget. It is expected to offer the economic survey that's been put out is expected to offer some key insights into the country's fiscal health and future outlook. So with the world very closely watching India's economic policies, all eyes are of course going to be on the budget. That of course will be read out tomorrow. And WION's Dharamjot Kaur has got more on this.
Day one of the budget session in India Parliament has been kicked off by the President's joint address to both the upper and the lower house. Now, in a short while from now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be tabling the economic survey in both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Now, the economic survey is an indicator of several socio-economic indications in terms of how the country has performed in the past and what will be the outlook for the upcoming fiscal year. Now, the economic survey will also set the tone for what the budget will look like tomorrow, with all eyes on the provisions, especially the middle class hoping for certain tax relief. Whether or not that happens is something to watch out for. With video journalist Libin, this is Dharamjot Kaur for WION World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what of course is to be expected from the budget, we're joined by Mr. Mukesh Bhutani, who's the managing partner BMR Legal, is joining us live from New Delhi. Mr. Bhutani, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. And let me in fact start off by asking you this. There are a number of expectations that the people of India have, the common people, the middle class and also the business community. In your assessment, what do you think will be the key focus of the budget this year that will be presented by Nirmala Sitharaman?
I think the key focus will revolve around the themes which was articulated by the Chief Economic Advisor in today's survey. So it is more or less follow that scheme of innovation. One should expect benefits for the middle class. I think the challenges for 2025 are more than the challenges we saw in the earlier years, particularly in the post-recovery years. And that's largely because of the inflation, the impact thereof on the common man, and the fact that the real disposable income has gone down over a period of time. So you should expect a significant rejig in the slab rates, primarily motivated with the objective of ensuring that there is more disposable income, which will give rise to more demand for products. As you can see from the quarterly accounts, third consecutive quarter of most of the FMCG companies, they have all been suffering from slackness in demand. So I think the central theme would be the poor and the middle class, which the Prime Minister articulated while he opened the budget session of the Parliament.
Interesting. Now, consumption has gone down. This is a serious problem which the government would seek to address. But do you think the government actually, can use the budget to push forth policies to try boost consumption?
No doubt about it. So, your question that the consumption has gone down is very contextual. So, if you look at basic products of household, there the consumption has gone down because there is in general a depression in the demand in the semi-urban areas, urban and in the rural areas as well. But if you look at the consumption of luxury products, if you look at the high value houses, those transactions have not seen any let up as such.
Absolutely.
So I think you need to look at it in context, and it's not just for larger political gains that the focus would be on the pure poor and the middle class. But I see that this budget in particular will lay more emphasis on that because of the impact of inflation as well.
Interesting. Do continue to stay on with this, Mr. Bhutani. I want you to weigh in on some other aspects that, of course, will be discussed as part of this budget. But at this moment, the government is, of course, playing a balancing act. It is trying to ensure sustained economic growth while also managing inflation, boosting consumer demand and maintaining fiscal discipline. While the Economic Survey 2024-2025 presents a pretty optimistic picture of India's growth trajectory, a deeper analysis also reveals some of the underlying challenges that need to be addressed through well-calibrated policy interventions. So let's take a look at some of the highlights from the Economic Survey. Now, the first advance estimates peg India's real GDP growth at about 6.4% for the financial year 2025, with the services sector leading the expansion at 7.2%. However, the pace of growth has moderated compared to previous years, primarily due to the softening of gross capital formation. Key challenge for the government in the upcoming budget will be stimulating private investment while also ensuring sustainable growth. Now, potential policy intervention could be enhancing the ease of doing business, improving access to credit for micro, small and medium enterprises, and providing targeted tax incentives for private investment in infrastructure and manufacturing. Retail inflation has moderated to about 4.9% in financial year 2025 from 5.4% in the financial year 2024, largely due to the declining core inflation. However, food inflation remains a pressing concern, primarily driven by volatile prices of essential commodities like pulses and vegetables. While the government has undertaken buffer stock interventions and has relaxed import duties on pulses to contain the price spikes, extreme weather events and also supply chain disruptions have continued to exert pressure on food prices. Now, to mitigate inflation risks, the budget could allocate more resources towards developing climate-resilient agricultural practices, enhancing cold storage infrastructure and implementing policies to stabilize food supply chains. Additionally, monitoring and also diversifying import sources for essential commodities could prevent supply shocks. The report says that consumer demand shows a notable uptick, largely driven by a revival in rural demand. Now, this resurgence is attributed to record kharif production and higher minimum support prices. Now, in contrast, urban demand displayed mixed trends. Passenger vehicle sales growth slowed in the previous year and FMCG sales has remained fairly moderate, although air passenger traffic saw some steady growth. A major concern is whether rural demand can sustain itself beyond the harvest season. Now, the government could, of course, consider direct cash transfers, rural employment programs and enhanced credit availability to sustain rural consumption. Additionally, policies that are aimed at boosting urban consumer sentiment, such as tax relief for middle-income households and incentives for discretionary spending, could support broader demand recovery. Now, despite a rising capital expenditure, India's fiscal discipline has also improved. The general government savings have been contained, ensuring macroeconomic stability. However, sustaining this discipline while expanding developmental and welfare spending remains a huge challenge. In the upcoming budget, the government will have to focus on targeted spending rather than on broad-based subsidies. Increased capital outlays in high multiplier sectors such as infrastructure and renewable energy, along with rationalizing revenue expenditure, will be crucial. Furthermore, boosting tax compliance and widening the tax base through digitalization and formalization of the informal economy can improve the fiscal health without burdening taxpayers excessively. While the economic survey indicates that the Indian economy is in good shape, several headwinds still persist. Global uncertainties, inflationary risks and domestic demand inconsistencies necessitate a pragmatic approach. And experts say that the union budget must prioritize policy measures that stimulate investment, control inflation, bolster consumer confidence and maintain fiscal prudence to achieve the developed nation status by the year 2024. And also, Mr. Bhutani is still with us on this broadcast. Mr. Bhutani, one of the key issues that's going to be looked at is how inflation has played havoc, especially when it comes to food inflation. You made an important point that when we talk of consumption, it has to be looked into the context-based. The fact is, the rich seem to be doing really well, but the common people, the middle class, and of course, the poorer sections have been affected very badly by food inflation. And this also brings to the fore the question of income inequality, where a recent report indicated that income inequality in India is on levels that we've not witnessed in many decades. In your assessment, are these some of these challenges that can be addressed by the budget tomorrow by Nirmala Sitharaman?
Well, income inequality is a phenomena in both developed and developing economies, but I think it's more visible in a developing and an emerging economy like India. The rates of tax are an indication for redistribution of income. That's the first principle that any economist follows, that use higher rates of tax, progressive rates of taxation to tax more. However, it's a double-edged sword, because if you have very high tax rates, you're making businesses more uncompetitive. So then the argument is that you have moderate rates of tax for businesses and high rates of tax for individuals. If you look at the rates of tax today and you add surcharges to it, we are already almost at 39.75% as the maximum marginal rate, which, though slightly lower, there are other countries, particularly in Scandinavia and in continental Europe, which have higher maximum marginal tax rates. But India is not far away from that. I think the problem that we have is a complex 4-rate system of 5, 10, 15 and 20 for income below 15 lakhs. So your real, genuine middle class is in that category. I think today, given the rates of inflation, anyone with an annual income between 8 lakhs and 15 lakhs really is middle class, or if not a middle class, a well-off middle class.
Right.
Now, the 20% rate of tax is a bit on the higher side for that class. And if you look at the slab rate changes in the last 10 years, not even 5 years, and you look at the inflation, the real income for that class of taxpayers has gone down.
Right.
And that's the class of taxpayers which is facing the maximum pinch. Whether it's got to do with consumables. You talked about food inflation. Really, the food inflation is about food grains that are available through the public distribution system. But if you go and buy a shampoo, or if you pay a rent, if you're living in a major metropolitan city, that's not measured by inflation. In fact, the real inflation over there is much more higher. So that's the real pinch. And I think you need rejigging for those class of taxpayers to ensure that you have meaningful, more disposable income and not just mere tokenism. Right. If you're going to tell a taxpayer who has a disposable income, say of 1.5 lakh rupees, that I've given you a tax concession, which gives you 2,000 rupees more per month, that's tokenism.
Right.
So you need a major rejig of tax rates at that level.
Indeed, I'm pretty sure Nirmala Sitharaman would be considering all of these aspects as the budget, of course, would be presented tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Bhutani, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.